The auditorium buzzed with excitement, parents and families filling every seat as the bright blue graduation banners hung overhead. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the faint smell of floor polish, something only one man in the room recognized intimately. At the far back corner, standing instead of sitting, was Daniel Brooks, a quiet, broad-shouldered single father who worked as the senior night shift janitor at Redwood High School. To everyone else, he looked like just another tired worker who had slipped in on his break. His grey uniform shirt had a small rip on the shoulder, his boots were worn, and his hands carried the deep scratches of years of hard labor. But to Daniel, this night was not about appearances. It was about seeing his twin daughters, Lily and Hannah Brooks, walk across that stage with honors. He gripped the doorway, his knuckles tightening as emotions swelled in his chest. He had cleaned these halls while his daughters studied late. He had skipped meals so they never had to. He had taken night shifts so he could walk them to school in the mornings. And now they were here, moments away from graduating. He whispered under his breath, "You did it, girls." Rows ahead of him, families snapped photos, cheered, and waved small flags. A group of students in decorated caps huddled together, laughing. But no one noticed the janitor in the back, or the faint outline of an old military tattoo half hidden beneath his rolled-up sleeve. It was faded, but unmistakable to anyone who knew what it meant, a black eagle perched on a dagger, surrounded by coordinates. A symbol that wasn't supposed to exist. Daniel tugged his sleeve back down quickly. No one had recognized it in years, and he prayed tonight wouldn't be the first. As he leaned to the side for a better view of the stage, he saw Lily and Hannah lining up with their classmates. Both girls were beaming. Lily, the more outgoing of the two, kept waving at everyone she made eye contact with. Hannah held her honor sash neatly in place, nervous but glowing with pride. Daniel's heart swelled. They looked so confident, so bright, so unlike the scared little girls he'd once carried out of a burning apartment complex during the worst night of their lives. No one here knew that story either. Not the teachers, not the parents, not even the principal. Daniel had made sure of that. Suddenly, the crowd near the front shifted as a figure in full dress uniform walked briskly to an empty, very important person seat. He wore the dark blue coat of a United States Marine Corps captain, ribbons perfectly aligned, posture straight as a blade. Captain Marcus Hale, tall, sharply focused, and carrying an energy that turned heads without trying. Students whispered excitedly nearby. Apparently the school had invited him as a guest of honor, but he'd arrived late from a base assignment. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. The last thing he expected tonight was a Marine captain in the room. He straightened, instinctively shifting his posture, a subconscious reaction he hadn't felt in years. Old training resurfaced, coursing through his muscles. Before he could fully calm himself, the captain glanced back toward the entrance, their eyes locked. Marcus paused. His gaze dropped immediately to Daniel's left arm, where the sleeve had slipped just enough to reveal the faint black eagle tattoo. For a split second, the captain froze, not in confusion, but in recognition. His jaw clenched. His eyes widened just slightly, as though he'd spotted something impossible. Daniel quickly tugged his sleeve down again, pretending not to notice. But Marcus Hale wasn't the kind of man who let things go. He excused himself from the row, ignoring whispers as he moved. With sharp military precision, he walked up the aisle directly toward Daniel. Daniel's breath hitched. "No, not tonight," he whispered. "Please, not tonight." The captain approached until he stood only a few feet away, his expression locked somewhere between disbelief and awe. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, but with the authority of a man addressing someone far above him. "Where did you get that tattoo?" Daniel didn't answer. He stared straight ahead at the stage, pretending to be just another worker on break. "Sir," Marcus repeated, lowering his voice even more, "that symbol belongs only to members of Shadow Company." Daniel closed his eyes. He had buried that name years ago. A classified Marine reconnaissance unit erased from records, disbanded after a mission no one survived, except him. The captain swallowed hard, realizing exactly who stood before him. You're Ghost 6, he whispered. Daniel flinched. That call sign hadn't touched his ears in almost 2 decades. Families in the audience cheered as the ceremony began, completely unaware that a man once considered one of the most lethal Marines alive stood silently behind them, cleaning classrooms and emptying trash cans for a living. Marcus stepped closer. "Sir, what are you doing here?" Daniel finally looked him in the eyes. "I'm watching my daughters graduate," he said quietly. "That's all I want tonight." Marcus stiffened, unsure whether to salute, question him, or simply step aside. Before either man could say another word, the principal called, "Lily Brooks!" The crowd erupted. Daniel's eyes watered as his daughter walked proudly onto the stage. But Captain Marcus Hale didn't clap. He stared at Daniel's sleeve, brows tightening with growing realization. Because men like Ghost 6 didn't disappear for no reason. Something was wrong, something big. And tonight, Daniel Brooks' past had just found him. The room thundered with applause as Lily accepted her diploma, her smile wide and shining beneath the auditorium lights. Hannah, next in line, clasped her sister's hand before she stepped toward the stairs. Parents around them shouted with pride, phones lifted high, but Daniel didn't hear any of it. His pulse pounded too loudly in his ears. Captain Marcus Hale stood beside him, rigid as steel. His eyes stayed locked on Daniel, as if afraid he might vanish into thin air. "Ghost 6, Marcus whispered again, as though testing the reality of it. "Sir, they declared your entire unit dead. You were listed as Kia. How is this even possible?" Daniel forced a slow breath, never taking his eyes off his daughters. "I'm not that man anymore." "But you were him," Marcus insisted. "The stories about you, about the mission in Karana Pass. Sir, they said you saved 12 Marines with—" Daniel raised one finger sharply. A silent command. Marcus stopped talking immediately. "Whatever you think you know," Daniel murmured, voice calm but hard, "you don't. And you need to drop this. Now." Marcus opened his mouth but closed it quickly. The tone in Daniel's voice wasn't a suggestion. It was the voice of a commander, someone who had once given orders life and death weight. On stage, Hannah Brooks walked gracefully toward the podium. She adjusted her tassel nervously, scanning the crowd for her father. Daniel stepped just slightly to the side so she could see him better. Her eyes met his, and that one moment melted the world around him. He remembered the night everything had changed. Years ago, deep in the desert, the mission gone wrong. The explosion. The official report claiming all 6 members of Shadow Company were killed in an ambush. But Daniel hadn't died. He had survived, but barely. And survival had come at a price. He walked away from the Marines, from the life he once knew, and from the world that believed he was buried under sand and twisted steel. No one could ever know he lived, not after what he'd seen, not after what he'd been part of. So he vanished. He took custody of his daughters, who were only toddlers at the time, and he became someone unremarkable. A man who cleaned floors and fixed light bulbs. A man no one looked at twice, until tonight. As Hannah shook hands with the principal, Marcus leaned in again, softer this time. "Sir, if you're alive, the Corps will want to know." Daniel's eyes hardened. "No, they won't, but the tattoo, forget you saw it." Marcus hesitated. "With respect, sir, I can't. Shadow Company was legendary. You were legendary." "I'm a janitor," Daniel said simply. "That's all. Let the dead stay dead." The captain searched his face, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the quiet man before him with the brotherhood he had sworn to serve. But something else gnawed at him too, something Daniel didn't miss. Suspicion, fear, not of Daniel, but for him. Like Marcus knew something Daniel didn't, like Daniel's past wasn't the only thing walking toward him. A sudden shout from the front row made both men turn. A group of students rushed into the aisle, celebrating loudly as another graduate's name was called. One tall boy accidentally bumped Daniel, causing his sleeve to slide up again. Marcus's eyes widened, not at the tattoo this time, but at the thick scar running from Daniel's wrist to his elbow. A scar only inflicted by one type of blade, used only by one enemy unit in the world. "Sir," Marcus said tensely, "that's from a Korali raptor knife." Daniel's jaw clenched. He hadn't heard that name in years. Marcus swallowed. "Sir, we recently intercepted chatter. Someone high value is being hunted by Korali mercenaries, someone we thought was long dead." Daniel exhaled slowly. "And you think it's me?" "I know it is," Marcus said quietly. "If I recognized your tattoo, they will too. They never stop searching for the one soldier who escaped Karana Pass alive." Daniel's heart went cold. He glanced toward the stage where his daughters stood side by side, posing for group photos, their laughter bright and free. He couldn't let anything, anyone, threaten them. Marcus edged closer. "Sir, please, let me help you. Let me contact command. We can protect you and your girls. No command, no Marines, no reports." Daniel's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "This ends with me, not them." Before Marcus could reply, the principal's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for our honor graduates, Lily and Hannah Brooks." The audience roared. Both girls raised their diplomas proudly. Daniel clapped, tears shining in his eyes. But Marcus didn't clap. He stared at the doors at the back of the auditorium, two dark silhouettes standing there motionless, watching Daniel, waiting. "Sir," Marcus breathed, his face turning pale. "They're here." The moment Captain Marcus Hale whispered "they're here," Daniel felt his entire world constrict. Years of hiding, wiping away his footprints, living quietly in a forgotten corner of the city, it had all been for nothing. The two silhouettes at the back of the auditorium stood unnaturally still, their posture too rigid, too disciplined to be ordinary guests. Corrali mercenaries, hunters trained to track men who were never supposed to live past their missions. Daniel didn't move, he didn't blink, he simply watched the shadows through the corner of his eye as the ceremony continued on stage. Students screamed, confetti cannons fired, and music blared. Perfect chaos, perfect cover. Marcus leaned slightly toward him. "Sir, if they spotted you—" "They didn't." Daniel's voice was a low breath. "Not yet." Marcus inhaled sharply. "Sir, we can't stay here. There are civilians everywhere. Kids." Daniel's eyes drifted to Lily and Hannah, who were hugging their best friends on stage. He swallowed the fear clawing up his throat. "No one touches this room," he muttered. "Not while my girls are here." One of the silhouettes shifted and whispered something into a shoulder mic. Daniel's heart dropped. They weren't just watching, they were coordinating. Marcus tensed. "We're sitting ducks." Daniel's mind began working through calculations like gears snapping into motion. Entrance points, exits, lines of sight, sound cover, civilian flow, old instincts he swore he would never use again. He exhaled. "We move in 60 seconds. Marcus blinked. "Move? How?" "You're going to walk to the stage," Daniel said softly. "Congratulate the principal, speak to the girls, act natural. And you?" "I'll slip out the side stairwell." Marcus stared at him, stunned. "Sir, they want you, not me. That's why you walk in the open. They'll track you with their eyes while I move." "That's suicide." Daniel gave him a tired look. "I've done worse." Marcus clenched his jaw. "At least let me call backup. No Marines." Daniel's voice sharpened. "I don't want command digging up my file. My daughters think I'm a janitor, not a ghost." The captain swallowed. "You can't fight them alone." "I'm not fighting." Daniel looked at his daughters again, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm leading them away." Marcus finally understood. Daniel wasn't trying to win, he was trying to protect. He nodded slowly. "I'll stall them." Daniel squeezed his shoulder once, an old soldier's silent thank you. "Be careful." Marcus forced a smirk. "You first, sir." The ceremony's final applause thundered across the auditorium as diplomas were tossed into the air. Students began running down the aisles, parents rushing to greet them. The room erupted into joyful chaos, and Daniel used it. He slid behind a line of cheering grandparents, slipped past a pillar, and made his way toward the side door. He moved like a shadow himself, practiced, precise, invisible. But before he could reach the exit, one of the silhouettes shifted. A broad man with a shaved head turned his chin slightly, eyes narrowing. His focus drifted away from Marcus on stage, toward Daniel. "Damn," Daniel whispered. The mercenary murmured something into his mic. Marcus, still near the front aisle, caught the movement. His eyes widened. He mouthed, "Run." Daniel didn't. He couldn't break into a sprint, not with hundreds of civilians present. Instead, he slid into a small side hallway near the trophy case, knowing one thing: they would follow. Because they always did. He pushed through the door into the stairwell, the echo of distant celebration muffling behind him. The air here was cooler, the fluorescent lights flickering faintly. Footsteps followed. 2 sets. He descended one flight, quiet, controlled, then turned sharply and went up instead of down. The mercenaries wouldn't expect that. Strategic misdirection. Rule #3 of evasion. But when he reached the top landing and cracked the door open, A voice behind him froze him in place. "Ghost 6. Daniel's breath caught. Slowly he turned. The shaved-head mercenary stood 10 steps below, a pistol raised, his partner blocking the lower exit. The hunter smirked. "You were harder to find than the bounty claimed." Daniel glared. "Then turn around. Forget you ever saw me." The mercenary laughed. No, we've waited years for this. The only surviving Shadow Company operative, the one who destroyed our command post. You don't walk away again." Daniel exhaled. "You shouldn't have come here." "Oh," the gunman sneered. "Why? Because of your daughters?" Daniel's blood froze. Every muscle in his body snapped taut. The mercenary savored the reaction. "Yes, we know about them. Lily and Hannah, right? Pretty girls. It'd be a shame if—" He never finished the sentence. Daniel moved, fast, too fast, a blur of controlled violence. 1 second he was standing still. The next he was halfway down the stairs, grabbing the gunner's wrist and slamming it against the railing. The weapon clattered down the steps. Daniel drove his elbow into the man's throat, dropping him instantly. The second mercenary raised his gun. But Daniel snatched the fallen pistol mid-roll and fired once. The bullet struck the railing beside the mercenary's hand, forcing him to drop the weapon in panic. Daniel lunged, kicking it away. Breathing hard, he pinned the man against the concrete wall. "Where's the rest of your team?" Daniel growled. The mercenary stared up at him, shaking. "They're already in the building." Daniel's stomach dropped. "How many?" 6. Daniel closed his eyes. 6 mercenaries, 2 daughters, 1 way out, and a past that wanted blood. He released the man, letting him collapse. Then he whispered the words he never wanted to say again. "It's time to finish this." Daniel Brooks stood alone at the top of the stairwell, breathing hard, the weight of a past life pressing against his shoulders. Down below, 2 mercenaries lay incapacitated, 1 unconscious, 1 trembling in fear. But 6 more were somewhere inside the school, closing in. He knew their tactics, he knew their speed, and he knew one terrible truth: they would not stop until he was dead. And if they couldn't get to him, they would go after his daughters. Daniel's jaw tightened. Memories of Lily and Hannah as toddlers flashed through his mind. The night he carried them both through thick smoke, running barefoot through broken glass as their apartment burned to the ground. He had sworn then that nothing would ever harm them again. Not fire, not war, not the ghosts of his past. He pushed through the rooftop door silently, slipping into the cool night air. The sky was painted in streaks of deep orange and purple, graduation lights glowing below. Laughter and music drifted up from the courtyard. Dozens of students celebrated freely, unaware of the predators lurking inside the building. Daniel crouched low behind a ventilation unit. He needed to lead the mercenaries away, far away from the crowd. He pulled the walkie he'd picked off the first mercenary, twisting the dial until static cleared. A voice crackled, "Team Alpha in position. Target is heading upward. Team Bravo, hold lower exits." Daniel lifted the device to his mouth. "This is Ghost 6. Silence." Then, "Impossible," Daniel continued, voice steady and cold. "You want me? Come get me. Roof of the admin wing." He tossed the walkie aside. A calculated risk, one that would pull all 6 mercenaries toward him, away from the students, away from his daughters, away from everything he loved. He stood in the center of the rooftop, cracked knuckles, and rolled his shoulders. His old training thrummed through his veins, awakening muscles he hadn't called upon in years. Then he waited. It didn't take long. A hatch burst open from the east side. 2 mercenaries sprinted out, rifles raised. Daniel grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, left behind by maintenance workers, and hurled it like a javelin. It struck the first attacker square in the chest, knocking him backward into the second. Both men stumbled. Daniel closed the distance in seconds, slamming an elbow into one jaw, hooking the other behind the knee and dropping him. But the west hatch flew open next. 3 more attackers stormed out, raising weapons. Daniel ducked behind a concrete barrier as bullets chewed into the rooftop gravel. He grabbed a fallen rifle, slid across the surface and fired twice, disarming without killing. He didn't want to take lives. He only wanted to save his daughters. 1 mercenary grabbed him from behind, wrapping thick arms around his neck. Daniel slammed his head backward, connecting with the man's nose. The grip loosened. Daniel spun, landed a kick in the attacker's ribs, and swept his legs, dropping him. Another came charging, swinging a baton. Daniel blocked, twisted, and wrenched it free before cracking it across the man's shin. The mercenary collapsed, groaning, 5 down, 1 left. A shadow emerged near the stairwell door. Taller, heavier, more tactical, their leader. The man clapped slowly. Ghost 6, the legend. I expected more. Daniel wiped blood from his lip. Walk away. This ends now. No, the leader sneered. This ends with your daughters. Daniel lunged. The leader moved faster than expected, dodging Daniel's punch and slamming a knee into Daniel's ribs. Pain shot through his side. Daniel countered with a jab, blocked. A kick, parried. The man was skilled. Former special forces, no doubt. But Daniel wasn't fighting with training anymore. He was fighting with rage and a father's love. The leader tried to reach for his knife, but Daniel grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and forced the knife to the ground. The man headbutted Daniel in desperation. Daniel staggered. The leader reached for a second hidden blade, but then a voice screamed from the rooftop entrance. "Dad!" Daniel froze. Lily and Hannah stood there, out of breath, eyes wide with terror. Behind them stood Captain Marcus Hale, who looked equally horrified. "No!" Daniel shouted. "Get back!" The mercenary leader grinned and lunged toward the girls. Daniel didn't think. He didn't breathe. He launched himself forward, slamming into the leader with every ounce of strength he had left. They crashed across the rooftop, rolling dangerously close to the edge. The leader sprang up, kicking Daniel in the chest. Daniel tumbled back, stopping inches from the ledge. The mercenary charged for a killing blow. But Daniel grabbed his vest, yanked him forward, and used the man's own momentum to flip him clean over the edge. The leader disappeared into the darkness. Silence fell. Heavy, cold silence. Daniel collapsed to his knees, chest heaving. Lily and Hannah ran to him, tears streaming. Dad, what's happening? What was all of that?" Daniel looked at them with exhausted, tear-filled eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted you to see this. I never wanted you to know who I used to be." The girls held him tightly. Marcus stepped forward slowly. "Girls, your dad isn't a janitor. He's—" Daniel raised a trembling hand. "No, I am a janitor. That's the man I chose to be. But a long time ago, I was someone else." The girls stared at him, trying to understand. "Dad," Hannah whispered, "what were you?" Daniel looked at both of them, his entire world, and answered quietly, "A soldier who finally found something worth living for." Lily hugged him harder. "You're just our dad. That's all we need." Marcus saluted him slowly. "Ghost 6, or Daniel Brooks. Whatever name you choose, the Corps owes you a debt. But your daughters owe you more." Daniel stood with their help, wincing. "Let's go home," he said. As they walked away, the rooftop lights flickering behind them, Daniel glanced once more at the silent night sky. The past had come for him, but he had chosen his future, and his daughters had seen the truth. Their father wasn't just a janitor. He was a warrior who fought his last battle for them.